Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep and the Mining podcast. And today's guest is Matt Fifield, who's the executive chair of Cyprium Metals, an emerging Australian copper producer focused on bringing the Nifty Copper Project back into production. They recently completed an $80 million equity raise, strengthening its balance sheet and securing new institutional support from Tribeca and the Tanito Group. With the rebuild of the Nifty operation now underway, the company is on track to deliver its first copper cathode within the next 12 months, positioning itself as the only ASX-listed copper developer expected to achieve its near-term production. In this episode, we're going to discuss the company's next milestones, from construction and refurbishment progress to partnerships with Macmahon and strategies for migrating executional risk. Matt is also going to share his insights on the funding strategy, the evolving copper market, and how his background in the global mining investment has shaped the company's disciplined approach to growth. With no further ado, let's welcome Matt to the podcast. Matt, how you doing?
Good, Rob. Good. I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.
No, appreciate your time as well. So, as we always start these podcasts off, I just wonder if you can just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your career, maybe from when you graduated, run us through your career until up until sort of present day.
Sure. You know, starting with the end in mind, I guess today I've been more successful in being able to bring together money, talent, and then initiate action around areas where people generally have found them, messy or too hard. And that's been born out of my career. I've had a couple different phases in my career. One is that I've been lucky to have multiple viewpoints. So when I first started, I was a geology student, becoming an investment banker, and that taught me quite a lot about financial modeling, about how financial markets work, about what investors are looking for. And I started my career in the late 90s, and that was a time where there was very little equity being raised and quite a lot of companies looking at what are their strategic options. So it put me into an interesting strategic headspace, and I did a lot of M&A work in my early days as a banker. In my 30s, I went, after working briefly with resource capital funds, I went to the company side and helped as a founding shareholder build Foresight Energy. Now, Foresight Energy brought the Illinois Basin back to life. It was an area that people had looked at and said, "Oh, this is never going to work again," because of changes in air quality and emissions. And then what ended up happening is technology caught up, and there was a sea change in the ability to use Illinois Basin coal. And we put $2.5 billion to work. We built 6 mines in 7 years, and it was a very hands-on, high-growth company. And it was incredibly successful, becoming America's lowest cost BTU. After that phase ended, I went down to Australia. And there I went back into the finance side of things in private equity, and I joined Pacific Road Capital, in particular looking at a bunch of concentrated investments that were underperforming and thinking about what had I learned in that high growth area, and being very hands-on, and how could we make change in those situations. And that was a very good experience. I still am the chair of Pacific Road Capital today, but as I've entered my 50s, what I've found is that I have this kind of, I've seen a lot, and I have done a lot, and I guess I've started to mature into finding situations where I can recognize some of the patterns and understand how to make change and drive change, create change, and attract talent and money around those situations to take things from being messy and unusual to being, highly successful and moving forward. And one of the great capstones on that for me has been the role that I've held as executive chairman in Cyprium Metals. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. I think for younger folks that are listening in, people are surprised. Some of my early college roommates and the rest are surprised that I've spent my entire life in one career. The mining industry it's a fantastic career. It engages so much of you, whether it's money or politics or people or growth or distress, or it takes you around the world and you meet these incredibly passionate people and you live in the physical, tangible world. And so the careers here are great and multifaceted, and you can spend your entire life fruitfully within this area. The other thing that I've been very lucky, beyond my passion for the industry, I've been very lucky is I've had some great mentors along the way. And so not only the experience that I've had professionally through my jobs, but also some of the people that I've been able to connect with and seeing there's a lot of different ways to get from A to B. There's a lot of different ways to be successful. And in the mentorships that I've been able to have, I've been able to sort of pick and choose from amongst those different styles and really help think about how I want to, what attracts me and what's interesting to me and how can I drive that forward. So it's there's quite a lot of interesting ways to do it and good mentors to have along the way.
Yeah, I just want to touch on mentors, as you've just been speaking about that, and obviously we get a lot of younger listeners listening to the podcast. How important is it to have a mentor, and how have your mentors helped shape your career? And do you think you could have achieved what you have achieved with a mentor or without a mentor?
Well, I think that the number one thing, so sometimes you can actually you can actually hunt people down, and people in this industry that care about it are interested in teaching and growing, and always everybody's interested in being surrounded by capable people, full stop. So showing that you are capable, showing that you're a safe pair of hands as a young person is extremely important. The thing that I think is really interesting beyond the hustle aspect and safe pair of hands is actually just being really curious. This is a physical industry. You're taking rocks and turning them into metal generally. Why is this happening? How is it happening? Who has done this before? It's a great question. Who's done this before? I don't have the corner on good answers, but most of these situations have been hit before. So the broader your network gets, the more that you can say, who's done X, Y, Z, and you bring them up and you say, hey, I'm wrestling with something. Can you talk to me about that? So I think that I've been lucky because I've had some very hands-on experiences with capable business founders and entrepreneurs, and with really different business models inside the industry, and that's been very rounding. And I wouldn't have been as successful if I hadn't been as exposed to that. But I think that at the same time, being obsessive about I hate to say it's embarrassing. I read, feasibility studies sometimes for fun because I'm just curious. I'm like, oh, I wonder how that works. And I'm constantly trying to surround myself with more information and understanding how other people are doing things to see if I can take that nugget and make it work in something that I'm working on. So, it's very helpful to have an industry mentor. It's a shortcut, but it's not the only way. There's many ways to get from A to B.
Yeah, certainly. Right, so moving on, just wonder if you can tell us a little bit more or give us a snapshot of Cyprium Metals as a company.
Yeah, so Cyprium Metals, it's a emerging producer. It's also a prolific past producer. So if you want to know just a handful of things about it, it's a brownfield copper producer in Western Australia. And it's had a couple phases of life. It was discovered, the principal deposit within Cyprium is the Nifty Copper Complex, which was discovered in the late 70s. It was brought into production in the mid 90s. And it had a phase where it produced quite a lot of copper cathode. And then it had another phase where it produced quite a lot of, copper concentrate from an underground mine. And one of the things that's interesting about it is it's going through that phase change where the underground mine effectively depleted. It ran out of economic ore, in part because prices had come down. and in part because of the geometry of the ore body. And it's a sedimentary hosted copper ore body, which means that it's a tabular ore body. It's laterally continuous. And so from the high grade underground back to the surface, there's a whole, we've got 82 million tons in reserve at 0.9%, which is a very unusual stat for copper. The reason that that exists and exists in Western Australia is because the underground mine came through its messy end of life. And then there were a series of kind of management turnovers through COVID and until I joined as executive chair in 2024. So when I joined, it was a bit of a turnaround story. We had quite a lot of debt on the balance sheet, which had come from the past. The plans were loose and directionally correct, but not tied down. And it was time to take action. And we can come back, Rob, and talk about quite all the different points along the way. But effectively, this is my third public turnaround, my ninth mine startup. And what you have to figure out is what do you need to do? And then what do you need to stop doing? And then you just need to simplify and get to a place where you can crawl your way out of the situation. And I think that there's probably philosophically, there are two things around that, which is, when coming into Cyprium was, how do we move out of the situation, set good plans, and then how do we attract people and partners and execute? So 2024 and 2025 is very successful. Now today, we should be producing between 6,000 and 7,000 tons of copper cathode next year for the first step in our phased restart. And you should expect us to scale that. The total productive capacity of Nifty is 75,000 tons of copper, 50 at the mill with some plans, with some expansion plans, and 25 at the SXEW. And so how fast can we move in this market to create a really significant mine from where we sit today? That's sort of the challenge we're sitting on now.
With the recent 80 million equity raise now completed, what are the key milestones that will mark progress towards first copper cathode production at Nifty over the next 9 to 12 months?
Yeah, look, great question. So we raised quite a lot of money, and what we're going to do is we're going to kick off, as I said before, the restart of the cathode processing facilities. There's 4 key areas that we look at. The first one is we have to reestablish ponds and drains. So it's a heap leach that we are going to re-leach. And that means that in the first instance, you need to have the ponds, drains, and associated infrastructure that'll be able to service the heaps. The second one is we commission the heaps. And by that, I mean we bring in sulfuric acid and we apply it to the heaps and it begins to generate copper. Then you're kind of in that, once you're through the first stage, you're ready to leach. Then once you're leaching, you're ready to plate. The third phase we're looking at is the delivery of the refurbishment on the SXEW plant itself. And that's very mechanical. We're replacing pumps and valves, PLC controls and wiring. And it's kind of a find and replace in order to get this operating plant back into operating condition and into today's code. Then the fourth one is really on the team, which is, do the operators understand, the operating plan? Are we trained? Are we going to be safe and compliant? And are we ready to go? So, in short, it's infrastructure gets you ready to leach, heaps commissioning gets you ready to plate, get the plant put together, then you're ready to send it to market. And then you have to have a team that knows how to operate it safely and compliantly.
How do you expect the company to strengthen its balance sheet and support from new institution investors like Tribeca and Tanito Group to shape your funding strategy for the phase 2 sulfide project?
Yeah, so the first phase I'll answer that slightly differently, Rob. So the first phase of what we're doing is we're turning on the heap leach, and it generates some really important early cash flows for us. We have now the financial capacity to execute that, and it's fully funded, and the early works are underway. As we execute that project, we believe that we'll be, producing substantial amounts of free cash flow, and that can be used to continue to hold and operate the business, and then also to address some of our still existing debt load and pay down debt. The real reason to be here, as I talked about earlier, is the substantial reserve between the underground and the open pit. There's that huge, wonderful sulfide reserve that right next to it is the plant that I was talking about that can operate at about 3 million tons a year and produce up to 50,000 tons of metal and concentrate. And so we're working on plans to bring that into production as soon as we have effectively executed on the early cash flow project. So delivery of that's what we're calling, phase two. Phase two is phase one, restart the concentrate. Phase one, restart cathode production. Phase two, restart concentrate production. And then that enables us to establish a substantial business, north of our PFS showed an average production rate from the concentrate path of 38,000 tons a year of metal and concentrate. So with all of that, we're very blessed because these things are built, permitted, but they do need refurbishing. And then in the open pit, we need to do some pre-strip and come up with the right mine design to open up open pit mining. So there's some cash that's involved there. When we went through the $80 million equity raise, we had tremendous support from our existing shareholders, which is great. And we also were able to attract a whole new suite of institutional investors, including Tribeca, and Tanito Group, which is one of Asia's largest family offices and an industrial family that invests in mining companies around the world. And then if you look at our share registry, we've moved from being owned predominantly by people that expect there is value in there somewhere to people that now we have a broad institutional register with a lot of notable ASX funds and investors. What you're seeing in the market today is that people are interested in the copper thematic. And there's probably no story like what we're doing at Cyprium to engage, around. Brownfield means that we're less capital intensive. Brownfield also means that we are quick to the mark because we have things that are built and we have things that are permitted. Then our phased development plan means that we're taking sensible risk piece by piece. So for us, the key to unlocking this next phase is to deliver the first piece well. And if we deliver the first piece well, we think that earns us the mandate to, one, it gets us cash flow that will be helpful in building the next parts of our life. And then the second is that it, sort of completes the mission that we outlined to investors when they came on board recently in this equity raise. And so with that, if we want to go back to market, we'll be in a much stronger position having executed with current cash flow. Outside of that, I would say, Rob, that the nature of the copper markets are changing. There's a lot of strategic interest from copper end users. Copper is becoming much more political. So there's interest from parastatal kind of government owned entities, and you're seeing that happen across the rare earth space as well. We think that will start to happen in copper as well, where people are looking at where's our copper going to come from? How's that going to help us feed our economy? And so there's quite a few more groups around that can help us with grow our business quickly.
What are the critical path items between the FID and the first copper production? And how is the alliance with Macmahon mitigating execution and schedule risk?
Yeah. So in this, we have, Macmahon, for your listeners that aren't familiar, Macmahon is about a 9,000 person strong mine contractor in Australia and in around Asia. So they have pretty deep capacity on the ability to build, to execute, to manage, and construct and mine safely. And in particular, their earth moving capacity and what we need to do at Nifty is almost a perfect match. So we entered into a strategic partnership with them, really to try to develop a sense of execution capability. And as we've kicked off the SXCW program, it's just come up in spades that our ability to move forward and manage the project accurately and move forward at pace. Everything from qualifying a vendor through to Mine Health and Safety Act systems, and if you need a piece of kit or some extra workforce, it sits within their umbrella. So it's really been a huge unlock for us in our capacity to build. That's one of the real, it's one of the things that you need to kind of think about is where are your strong partnerships? What do you need to be successful? It's very hard to do things all by yourself in this world. And so finding capable partners like Macmahon is really important. In terms of the key things between our kickoff of the project and delivery, I think that it comes back to those 4 areas I talked about earlier. One is timeline. When are we ready to start conditioning the heaps? Then, importantly, at the end of the sort of the commissioning of the heaps, is that you're seeing that the re-leach is working and copper is reporting into the ponds. Refurbing an SXEW and the high quality team that we have around that, from our own operators that have operated the plant before to some of the specialist consultants that used to work at Nifty as well. The plant's not as much of a worry. So, in this copper market, I think, Rob, where we are really focused is about keeping pace and schedule, because the faster we can, it's our biggest strategic advantage is the ability to cut time.
Yeah. Given the refurbishment scope at Nifty's SXEW plant, and heap leach pads, how confident are you in achieving nameplate production and maintaining cost discipline during the ramp up?
Yeah. So the number one thing when you're thinking about a heap leach, it's kind of your leading indicator. And so just stepping back for your listeners that don't really understand, what is heap leach? We have a historic and existing pad of agglomerated rock that contains copper oxides, and you put a solution on it that has weak sulfuric acid, and that basically comes in contact with the copper minerals and precipitates out of the bottom. And then from there, it goes on into a plant which is like a big chemistry set. And in that chemistry set, you recover preferentially the copper, and it gets plated into those copper plates that you see. So when you step back and you think about what are the key kind of success pieces, the key success piece for us, the leading indicator is really how many tons of pad do we have under leach? And that's something that we talk about a lot internally. How fast and for how long? So how fast can you get it under leach, and how long can you keep it under leach in order to create that contact between the sulfuric acid and the copper mineral? So that's probably the single biggest indicator for us in terms of making nameplate capacity, is our ability to get the right amount of tonnage under leach.
Copper prices have rebounded sharply this year. How does that influence your sales and offtake strategy for cathode production, and what discussions are underway with potential buyers?
So we've already done an offtake deal with Glencore. Glencore is a fabulous marketing partner. They have 100% of our copper cathode that we will produce, and that was a part of the business that we didn't want. With what we were trying to achieve and get right, we think that they're an extremely capable marketing partner. We did retain the ability to remarket and sell 30% of the project through our offtakes with Glencore, and so. Yeah, you're right. Copper price is moving, and also some of the other copper indicators. If you look at cathode premiums, the Arubis cathode premium just hit $315 a ton. A couple of years ago, it was $118 a ton. So cathode's in extra demand. Similarly, TCRCs on copper concentrate have fallen from kind of a historical normal level of $80 a ton down to $20 a ton on a benchmark basis. So it's not just that prices are strong, it's also that the sales related factors are all of those signals are showing a market that is desperately looking for units. So it's not much of a surprise if you think about our business at a stage. We're an emerging copper producer. We have tonnage that we can bring into a market that needs it. We're seeing a lot of end users that are looking for cathode to put into their to put into their downstream manufacturing. And that's things like wire, rod, brass plants, etc. All that's being coordinated through Glencore at the moment, but we are getting direct approaches from folks that are looking for product.
Cyprium is positioned as the only ASX-listed copper developer expected to bring new production online within the next 12 months. How do you plan to capitalise on that first mover advantage in attracting institutional coverage and liquidity?
Yeah. So I think that to some degree, we're that the equity raise that we went through recently has moved us a huge degree in that direction. We have just a fantastic roster of shareholders, and our liquidity up post transaction. Now we're trading in the range of $1 million a day at peaks, and kind of $300,000 to $500,000 a day. It's almost 10x of where we were beforehand. So we're seeing more interest in our shares as our business matures, and we have very high quality institutions that are both buying, which is really important, but also selling, which is equally important to generate that liquidity. So people are interested in what we're doing enough to be buying and selling our shares, and that's kind of what we need. I think on the first mover advantage, the part that's interesting to me is we are at the very front edge of what feels like a capital cycle in the mining industry, and having been through this a number of times, we have the ability. It's like we're ahead of the wave of greenfields. This is the time for brownfields. This is the time to restart old plants. Commodity prices are higher. You can deliver them faster. And we basically pre-armed ourselves with strong relationships like Glencore that we talked about, and like Macmahon. So we're able to move faster and more aggressively. And the big question will be, will that allow us to grow our business more quickly than somebody that is on a 3 or 4 year build schedule? They have a great project, but they're just they don't have all the advantages of sunk capital that we have.
Following IGO's exit and your consolidation of 100% of the Patterson exploration package, what is the exploration strategy for 2026, and how could new discoveries feed into the Nifty development pipeline?
Well, if you remember going back to it, the ore genesis model here is sedimentary hosted copper. What that really means, that's like you see that in Poland, you see that in Botswana. It's basically very regional. It's not like one mine and you're done. And what we see, we have these prime tenements that from MIM and WMC days, they're sort of the best of the best. And we have defined resources at Nifty. We have defined resources at Maroochydore and Warrabarty, and other areas that, as we look, you can continue to see it in between them all. Lots of high grade hits that connect and show the whole area is full of mineralization. Over the last 10 years, it's that exploration package has received very little attention. So on one hand, we're executing and delivering. Our single biggest driver is going to be the delivery of the SXEW. But I would expect that we will look after a couple of the opportunities that folks like IGO and others had flagged but didn't follow up on, because it's just amazing what happens when you put a little bit more effort into a great portfolio.
As you said in the introduction, you spent a lot of your career in the global mining investment and private equity space. How has that experience shaped your approach to building Cyprium into a next generation Australian copper producer?
Time that I was in, in investment banking was useful. You see a lot of transactions go by. Being mining private equity is a very good space. Again, you see quite a lot of things go by, but and on the company building side too, you have to live with the situation. You can't trade out of it, and that means that you have to admit and recognize issues and move through them and try to move through them quickly. And you need to build really good teams with strong communication, capable people. And sometimes those are internal teams and that are very important. And other times it can also be very important external partnerships like the Macmahon and Glencore partnerships we were talking about. I think that experience, having multiple ups, and just having seen what's worked and not worked, it's been helpful in recognizing where issues are and how to address them. A lot of the times, the question is, what can you stop doing, or what's the one thing that I need to do? And so there's a sort of a bit of a mentality that I have, which is, maybe you've heard of it. It's like the shoot the closest wolf. A lot of the times you're trying to figure out what's the perfect answer when in fact any progress will do. So you pick the one thing that you need to do and you put it behind you. And sometimes that's a fantastic decision. Other times it's just a decision. And it's pretty rare that you actually make decisions or movements that you can't recover from. So you have to focus on, is this called a type 2 decision? Or can I just make the decision and keep going? And that creates a culture of movement and mentality and risk taking. You don't get everything right, but if you stop and get paralyzed by, what may be, that can be, very disruptive, particularly for pre-revenue companies. So, I think that philosophically where we are at Cyprium is we have this huge advantage of 2 processing plants and an enormous ore body and great state to be working in, Western Australia, access to tier 1 supply chain. So we have all these embedded advantages. And then the copper market is as favorable as it's ever been. So it's just our job to move. We need to make decisions. We need to move forward. We need to take acceptable risks and then battle through the issues. I have yet to see, in my experience, any mining companies that don't have problems. And so it's not actually, you never get to a place where you have outrun all of your problems. You actually, it's about your capacity to recognize them, pick which ones you need to solve right now, solve those, and your capacity to deal with ambiguity or make decisions and move through problems quickly. That's probably one of the keys to success that has come out of my back track record, and hopefully something that we're building into Cyprium.
The copper market is entering a structural supply deficit. From your perspective, I suppose both as an investor and an operator, what differentiates successful developers from those that struggle to deliver in this kind of environment?
Yeah, Rob. Yeah. What's interesting, because the word developer means you're pre-revenue, right? And so therefore there's quite a lot of different stages of development. We're in construction mode. Some people are in entitlement mode. Some people are in exploration or whatever. I think taking a philosophical bent on this for developers, you have to think about who, as a company, your customer is. Now, normally for a developer, your customer is actually, because you have no revenue, I would argue that your customer is actually a shareholder, right? And so to a large degree, you need to understand what do shareholders want from what you have, and are you able to deliver it within the budget and the means that are available to you? One of the things that's interesting right now, particularly in the world generally, but in copper in particular, because the market looks like it will be short and for quite some time, given the growth in investment in grid, AI, people going back for remanufacturing, all of that needs copper, right? And there just haven't been enough copper mines coming on. So suddenly there's a whole new group of customers, per se, which include technology companies, governments, defense departments, smelters that can't find feed, and also policy-driven customers like government lenders or people looking to secure supply, policy-driven supply of critical minerals. So if you think about those as, again, just think of those as customers, you kind of have to understand what they want. right? And is there a way that you can build what they want into what you have? And with that, that's why frequently talking with other managers or folks that I've invested in before, you have to understand that running a responsible business, having a strong ESG mandate and footprint in terms of being able to identify where your risks are and showing that at least you understand that, then maybe you're managing them, or at least you're on that road. People that are looking to acquire you, that's a customer. Government back loans, that's a customer. Copper smelter looking for supply, that's a customer. A shareholder. And so thinking about that, that's what makes a good developer. And when you look, you can see there's some very skilled people in this industry that do a really nice job of identifying what they can do with the assets that they have in hand. One other thing I would say, and this is probably more around the exploration side, is quite often people fail to realize that they're not connecting through to that customer. They're not showing either the promise or hope, or that they don't have the scale to attract that type of a person to their company. And so sometimes it's actually being able to take a critical look and saying, oh, I need to invest in more exploration. I need to stop trying to chase down this path and chase down that path. And again, it's a funny way of thinking about it, but it's the way that I think about it is, who are you trying to serve? Because if you're a developer and you don't have any cash flow, you got to be serving somebody to keep your business alive.
Yeah. And lastly, and concluding, what's the short to medium term outlook? And also, if there's anything else you want to share with our audience.
Oh, I mean, we're in a just a fantastic period right now, right? This has got to be one of the most exciting times in a company's life. So we, again, 2024 and before, it was a lot of trouble. We worked very hard to get ourselves through those moments. And then on the back of that, we were able to attract a fantastic investor base and raise a lot of money. And now we're moving forward and building a project that's going to generate an incredible amount of cash flow for us, and is the first step of many to build what we think is Australia's next great copper company. In that, internally, our team has shifted from defense to offense, and we're moving forward. So you should just be expecting us to be firing on all cylinders as we deliver that project and we make the most out of the great portfolio that we have.
Great. Matt, really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story, telling us about Cyprium Metals and what you're looking to achieve with the business, and obviously going into production of copper cathode in the near term. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they've got any questions, and obviously follow the company and story, how can they go about doing that, and what social media platform channels are you on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're on LinkedIn. Our website is pretty comprehensive. We have a mailing list that we use and pay attention to, and that's all on cypriummetals.com. And you can find me at matt.fifield on cypriummetals.com.
Yeah, great. And we'll include these in all our show notes and accompany this podcast for easy access, and for all our listeners to reach out if they have any questions. It'd be great if you can come on the podcast next year and give us an update on proceedings.
So many things will have changed, so it'll be very exciting to say, here's what we did well. I wish we had thought of that. I mean, that's the nature of it all, but we've got some good momentum up right now, and I'm really excited about the future.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you again for your time, and good luck for the rest of the year going into 2026, and hope to speak to you during the course of next year.
Cheers. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for the interest.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. What a great story. ASX-listed copper company going into production. So please share this episode far and wide, not just with people in Australia, but people globally, whether they're in copper or not. It's a great story, and appreciate you sharing these episodes for obviously educational purposes as well. Thank you again. And until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.